What's going on, you guys? Getting here also on Solid85. Welcome to a Ramble review. Ramble review is actually something new I'm doing. These reviews don't really have a specific time that they end at, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Basically, it's just me talking about movies. You know, what I liked about it. There's no scripting, anything like that. You will have to forgive me. I've been fighting a pretty crazy head cold lately. Unfortunately, my fever picked back up this morning, but I wanted to do this video, so here we are. If you haven't seen Wonder Woman 1984 yet, it currently, as of this recording, it's available on HBO Max and in theaters. Now, I've seen it in both formats. And obviously, theatrical is fucking fantastic. Despite the reviews on this movie, I gotta get this right at some point. Despite the reviews on this movie, I loved it. This movie was very personal to me for a lot of reasons, which I'll go into here shortly. But I absolutely loved it. And yes, it has its faults, but this is a very positive review of this movie, which unfortunately at this point is kind of rare. But I'll go into my reasoning for that in a minute. A couple of things. Number one, why am I using this poster? This is a European poster. I love this poster. I love this poster. I wish it would have been used in American cinemas. I never saw this, but I would love to get this poster for my background and put it up on this wall at some point. This is a totally blank wall behind. You can't see it a whole lot right here, but I would love to get this poster. Okay, so let me go ahead and cover some general overtures of the movie. Number one, very emotional. Number two, very cartoony and very comic book in a lot of ways. Also, number three, in a lot of regards, very Wonder Woman. Let me explain that. Wonder Woman throughout this movie is more about truth, is more about emotion. There is action, there is humor, but while there is violence, it doesn't necessarily come from Diana. It's really more about the people that are around her. It's more about defense. She plays a whole lot of defense in this movie. There's not a whole lot of offense. She's very proactive in some regards. The movie overall, there's a very arcing. I'm not sure how to put this. It's a very arcing message of truth and self-reflection, basically. Which personally, in my personal life, I've been going through the last few years. And that's why this movie spoke to me. Because of what was happening in it. Admittingly, I have cried in this movie. I cried 3 times in theaters. And I've seen this movie 4 times so far because of HBO Max. And I've cried every single time. Notably during 2 scenes. Number one, when she has to tear away from Steve Trevor. My God. I cried so many tears on that. They nailed, especially Gal and Steve, they nailed that shot. You feel that pain of her having to give up the one thing that she's wanted ever since Steve gave his life to protect people. That hurt. That hurt. I felt that. Another couple of notable part was obviously the end. For a couple of reasons. Sorry, forgive me again. I'm going to cut the mic because I'm fighting this cold and I don't want to cough on stream, or on video. But the ending in 2 parts made me cry. Number one, Diana's message to everybody that was listening, and the truth that people were seeing. Notably, the guy in the diner that wished the waitress would drop dead, and then her wishing that him and his people, or whatever she said, would go back to where they came from. That's very relevant to nowadays, especially in a post-Trump era. Well, soon to be post-Trump, supposedly. There's here in America that's been pretty prevalent about people not being here, certain stuff. I'm not going to get political, but that message spoke to that. But to be honest, that's been around for a long time. That's humanity. Humanity is very tribal, and that spoke to that. So, but when she's talking to everybody, and they reflect on their wish, they reflect on their deepest desires, even if they're very dark, or even if they're very momentary, and they say it in that instant when they don't really mean it. That hits home, because the guy that made that wish for that waitress to die, or to drop dead, realized what he had done, and you deal with that emotionally. A lot of people do. Some people don't, because some people are sociopathic, but or emotional robots. There's nothing there, and there are people like that. Unfortunately, they're still human. They're still human beings, so they deserve to be respected. But some people don't feel remorse. Some people don't feel sympathy, either because of lives they've led or because of things they've been through. And personally, I've been on that level. I question myself sometimes if I'm still able to feel. And this movie proved I do. It was pretty crazy. So that I cried during that part, because looking at that guy with the wish he had made, him wanting to take it back, and him taking it back, that spoke to me, because I think we've all had that point in our life where we said something we wish we hadn't. And that's probably one of the worst things you can wish on somebody, is for them to drop dead, and then they do it. She ends up having a heart attack, and that was pretty crazy. So that got me teary eyed. It really did. Second part, but again, overall, that was just Diana speaking to everybody, and the words, that writing was phenomenal, and the way Gal delivered it, very mature, very heartfelt, just very honest. So much truth, so much truth. But what really hit me the most was Maxwell Lord. This is one of those few comic book movies to where, well, it is a DC film, notably. So historically, you are going to kind of root for the bad guy in some ways, but you don't usually feel for the bad guys a whole lot. I'm sure there's a few examples in the DC universe where you do feel for the bad guys. Sometimes, like in Man of Steel, you kind of feel for Zod because he did lose his people, but then again, Kal-El lost his people as well, and yet he's adopted humanity and wants to protect them, while Zod has gone the total opposite and wants to wipe them out and make Earth their new planet. Obviously, in Joker, you feel for his character, what he goes through in society, and how he comes to be. But that movie was about him, so you're obviously going to feel for him. But I don't know. Notably, this was probably the pinnacle, for me, most recently anyway, of feeling for a villain. In fact, the only thing that actually comes close is in the Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, for Trigon, and how in the end he tells his daughter thank you for giving him a fight with Darkseid. You really feel from there, because he has a very human moment, a very father-daughter moment. It was just really cool. But anyway, Max Lord. There's a couple reasons why I relate to him. Number one, you see glimpses of his past as a kid, being yelled at for wetting the bed, being mocked for what he has to wear to school, all kinds of stuff. I grew up as for the most part with a single mother in my early years, and she couldn't afford a whole lot. She worked 2 to 3 jobs just to keep her bills paid, so we couldn't afford a whole lot. Notably, there was a couple times when I wet the bed, and I got not by my mom, but by other family members. I got yelled at for it. When you get yelled at for a bodily function, it's kind of stupid, but you're too young to really realize that. And people get caught up in that moment, and they have a bit of a temper, and they're just like, yeah, you deserve to be yelled at. You deserve to be browbeat for having an accident. And he didn't deserve that, So it really shows how he became Max Lord. And that's what I loved about his character. It's funny, a lot of people complained that the movie was more Max Lord than Wonder Woman. To me, that's DC. That is DC. That is historic DC, when there's a lot of focus on the villain, because DC movies are about the villains for the most part. That's what a lot of people go for when it comes to the DC universe. I'm hoping this might have froze up. But that is the DC universe. A lot of people, notably, have told me, especially just general folks that don't really read the comics, but they love the superhero movies. They like the DC films, like the Batman films, Superman, for the villains, especially Batman, for the villains. I think they try to take a note of that in this movie and try to work with that, but I don't think a lot of people think they pulled it off very well. For me, it worked. I loved it. And I loved Maxwell Lord's character. I love the way it was played, especially by Pedro Pascal. Quick note about Pedro Pascal: he actually had a small part in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV series. I think it was a character he was playing where he asked Buffy out, or he takes her to prom or something. Anyway, a quick early glimpse at his career. 1998, something like that. Anyway, he played Maxwell Lord perfectly. In relation to that, quick side note: the whole wishing thing made sense to me. Made total sense to me, and I'll get into that in a minute. But the relationship between Max and his son. The son, when it comes to like looking like Max, there is a bit of a concern in the movie with that. I get that, I understand it, but they did share prominent features, so it is believable to me that he is Max's son. The child actor did a good job, I think, but I don't think he delivered it as best he could. But again, young actors, so there's only so much you can hope for, really. But I think he did a good job overall, especially seeming lost in the end when he's calling for his daddy. He wishes for his daddy to be back, and he's watching his father on the screen. Daddy, please come help me. That hit home, and the reunion with his son hit home. The intensity of that, the build up to that scene with him and his son, really hit home. I was a child of a split home at 5 years old. And my dad wasn't perfect. He worked a lot. There was times I was let down because there were weekends he promised to show up, but he never did. You go through that, especially as a boy growing up. You really look up to your father, and you feel abandoned a lot. And so seeing this kid run around, it spoke to me. A lot in this movie spoke to me. I felt it. It was purely emotional. And that's why I loved it, because it really spoke to me. In my initial thoughts video on this, I said that this movie was made for me, and I still believe that. I still believe that, even though billions of people will watch it, maybe even just millions. But this movie really connected with me in those regards. So it was fantastic, and I love it. Hardcore rating, 8 out of 10 overall. Now, let me touch on a few things that I think need to be touched on. First of all, Cheetah. Cheetah was, I think, actually done pretty well. The stages of her evolution, I would have loved to have seen her become Cheetah, like on screen, but she just kind of fades out and then comes back in, story-wise as a full-blown Cheetah. But her transformation works in two forms, and I think they're doing that because they want to bring her back, but not as Cheetah, but as another potential antagonist, or maybe even protagonist for Diana. So she makes her first wish on the actual stone. She wishes to be like Diana. She gets her powers, she gets her looks, she gets her, savoir-faire, everything. Gets her beauty, all kinds of stuff. So you see this pretty cliche story of this beautiful, ugly girl turn into the heartthrob, the woman every man wants, which is Diana. You see that, right? She gets her power, she gets her speed, she gets her strength, all kinds of stuff. So theoretically, that does make her character a demigoddess. It makes Minerva a demigoddess in ways. The depths of that are staggering. What is she capable of? Because she still has those powers. She is still that woman. And I'll tell you why. When she wished to become Cheetah, when she wished to become an apex predator on the plane with Maxwell Lord, Um, she made that wish through Max, who had become a stone, right? Max rescinded his wish. Anybody who made a wish on Max, they lost all their powers, no matter what. Even though everybody was rescinding their wish at the time, when Max rescinded his wish, anybody that made a wish on him, everything was gone. I believe. I believe. Um, but so that's why you see her going back to Cheetah. Um, I don't remember hearing Minerva say I rescind my wish, but when Max, if she did, that explains her going back to her initial um, first wish phase. But the second wish phase was lost one of two ways. Number one, she did rescind her wish, or because Max went back to not being stone. Um, yeah, I think it reset everything. And there's actually a lot to be gained because he obviously affected the whole planet with him broadcasting himself, which makes some sense. And I'll get to that in a minute with all the particles and everything. But Cheetah is now, Barbara Minerva is now a very formidable force for Wonder Woman. If not an Amazon in equal. I think power wise, strength, speed, stamina, beauty, she's probably more powerful than any other Amazon because, again, she's just like Diana. She got her powers, everything. So that again, it's staggering to think about. So, but that's what you see, and that's why Diana had to give Steve up, is because she made a wish on the stone, but it came at a cost, which I think holds a deeper truth, and it's talked about in the beginning. You can't get ahead in life if you cheat. It's not real. It's a total farce. There's no depth. There's no substance to getting ahead in life doing that. On a greater scope, the whole movie talks about greed, which Maxwell Lord is representing. He's getting very greedy. He wants everything for himself. He's helping these people, but at a cost, and he's choosing the cost and taking everything from them. He's using all these people to gain more power, which is obviously a very cliche villain thing to do. But at the same time, since the movie's based in the '80s, which is the pretty much the height of excess in our history, that speaks to the '80s because you had a lot of these Wall Street dudes, power brokers, everything back in the '80s. They were using people to get to where they are, and that just speaks to that as well. So it's a crazy thing. But anyway, with that said, I think Cheetah. I think there's more to come from Cheetah potentially, or there could be. They've set that up. I think she did great. Very sexy. Kristen Wiig, fantastic comedian from SNL. Done a lot of great stuff, and she was the total knockout in this film. They did a great job on her. She played her character awesome. There were some weird parts, but she did really good. I did want to talk about her confrontation with the drunkard that kept harassing her throughout the film. I think they wanted to build up and send a message there because when she's being attacked near the bus and she slams him into it, he's trying to, get his hands on her. She's like, no. And then she says no a second time. Pretty powerful message there. But you see her start to lose her humanity when she starts beating the living shit out of him. And he's in the street. The homeless guy that she's helped in the beginning of the film by giving him a meal comes back and says, what's going on? And she says, mind your business. Obviously, she's losing her humanity. That's the cost of her wish. She's losing her humanity. She's losing who she was to become who she is. And again, which again speaks to her deeper truth, because even throughout my life, as an abuse victim, I have found myself losing who I was to survive what I've been through to become who I am or who I'm becoming. And that's still a journey I'm going through, even as I make this recording. So it's, it's a hell of a thing. And it's great. To me, it's great character development. Again, I wish we could have seen evolution, the on-screen evolution of her becoming Cheetah, but there it is. Also, too, her wanting to become an apex predator, her wish. There are cues to her becoming a cat in her office. When you see all of these stuffed cats, there's a lot of cats in her office. So there's a bit of a setup there, a bit of a foreshadowing as to what'll happen. There's even some in the front of the shot. Um, I believe as she's bringing Max into her office, and you can see a lot of vulnerability in her when Max is brought into her office. And they start kissing, and she's just like immediately saying yes if Max wants to go somewhere and get a little groovy. Um, she's desperate. She's desperate for attention. She craves it. She wants it so bad that she's willing to believe that a wish can get her there. And that was the whole theme of the film, you know. So I really like Cheetah's character. I think they did really good with her. The animation could have been a bit better. You know, the CGI could have been a little bit better, especially during the fight. I'll get to that in a minute. But again, Cheetah's character overall, fantastic. Her fight with Diana there in the pool, where she is shocked, and Diana doesn't fly out to get away from the electrocution because Cheetah's being electrocuted. You got to remember, and I've actually seen some questions on Twitter about this. Diana doesn't get shot because she's a demigoddess. In the very first film, in the first Wonder Woman, she controls lightning, right? You see her kind of manipulating it, running it through her fingers, and just playing with it a bit before she takes out Ares. So that's not going to affect her. Not that she's back at full power. Now that she's back at full power, that's not going to affect her. So there was that I saw come up. Excuse me. I'm drinking some tea, but these Ramble views can take a little bit out of me. Okay. So there was also, I wanted to touch on in the movie, there was a couple other things that didn't make sense. Number one, Steve Trevor. Steve Trevor, I think, obviously with Chris Pine, does a fantastic job playing Steve Trevor again. They're talking about bringing him back in Flashpoint. We'll see what happens with that. But the way he came back was a little weird. That was a reference to Heaven Can Wait, an old 80s movie, Warren Beatty even. Actually, the one in the 80s was a remake, if I remember right. But Warren Beatty was in the original. The remake was in the 80s. But that was a bit of a reference because it was a fairly popular movie at the time. In fact, a fairly relative movie to that, if you've never seen that, is Logan's Run. Logan's Run was actually a pretty good film. I liked it. But again, very 80s. But the way Steve came back was kind of weird because he took over somebody's body. And there's a lot to that. There's a couple of things I wanted to mention. Number one, Diana's sleeping with him, supposedly. I'm pretty sure they had sex. I'm pretty sure they went at it. I mean, because when you're that much in love with somebody and you see them die and they somehow come back, oh yeah, no, you're going to want to go all night. But there is a theory that they didn't, because I read somewhere, I forget where it was, I think it was a Twitter post. Somebody didn't think she did because I think deep down they thought deep down Diana knew this wasn't really Steve, but she wanted to cuddle with him all night, have him there, body to body, physical contact, so on and so forth. I don't think that's right, but some people think that. But again, think about this. She made a very deep, profound wish from her heart to have Steve back. Now, arguably, the lasso of truth could show her the truth, right? But that's kind of the rub, because there's a point where her and Steve make contact with the lasso, and she's showing Steve the truth about her golden armor, her Kingdom Come armor. It's from the comic series Kingdom Come, the art for Wonder Woman and a few other heroes. But she's not showing her. She's not trying to show her truth or his truth. She's showing the armor's truth of how it happened, which makes sense to me in a way, because the lasso is a very powerful weapon, but it's mainly used defensively in the movie, which again I'll get to. But again, it's really weird. So with that said, and there was even a theory about, what if Diana got pregnant with this guy? It would be his kid. I don't think Diana can get pregnant from mortals. that's just a theory, but since she's a demigoddess, in I could be wrong on this, but I don't think it's possible for her to have a baby with a mortal being. Um, because I think it's more biological than anything because she's not built like standard humans. So I don't think she can bear a mortal child. I could be wrong about that, but I think in this universe that makes sense, especially the way she was born. Um, because she was molded and created. So I think they could mold and create a child for Steve and her if that was to ever be worked in at some point. I doubt it, but you never know. But anyway, that aside, it was a weird thing. But again, and a lot of people argue this is not Diana. It's not Diana's character to want to sleep with some random dude just because her her dead boyfriend is inhabiting the body. But again, this is all in Diana's mind. She's just seeing Steve, right? But this guy has also taken on Steve's personality. But to the real world, they don't see Steve. They just see this guy. And that's made apparent when Steve looks in the mirror and sees the guy that he's inhabiting, his body. It says, I like him. He's got it, you know. But Steve's personality has taken over the guy's body. So Diana sees Steve, but the rest of the world sees this unknown guy. I don't even remember if he had a name. Obviously, if she sees him in at the end. But the question is, because I don't remember, she may. I don't know if through the whole thing of Steve being taken over in the guy's body, if she ever actually saw what the guy looks like for real. Um, so when she sees him at the end of the film, she may not even recognize him, but she knows there's something about him because he's wearing those clothes that she wanted Steve to wear, but he didn't want to wear during that whole outfit scene. So there's a lot to that. There's a lot there. But again, I don't think it's weird that she slept with some random dude in that regard because again, she thinks it's Steve. Um and that's pretty much all there is to it. I don't think she's totally capable of stopping herself. Um because through and through, she believes that to be Steve Trevor. So it's pretty crazy. But anyway, overall, the movie. Okay, I got to bring this review to a close. We're going on half an hour. The movie is just fantastic. I love it. It's now part of my digital collection. I am going to get it on physical collection at some point. But I loved it. I hope you liked it. Again, there's a lot of controversy over this film. Overall, the movie is about truth. It's about holding strong. And that's why you see a lot of defense in the movie. That's why Diana is not very offensive, but definitely proactive and defensive, especially when fighting Cheetah. Cheetah's just tearing at her armor. You see Estria. I forget the ancient Amazon's name that defended the Amazons from all the men so they could run away. That's why you see her just kind of curled up. The men are just coming after her. She used like a massive taunt AoE, and like all these guys are, something like that. I'm guessing a spell was cast on the men to attack her, but she's got that armor to keep them busy, so she can kind of sacrifice herself. That kind of makes sense to me because there's a lot of ancient magics on Themyscira. A lot of people would just be like, why wouldn't she just fight them all to get their attention or let the other Amazons run away instead of just standing there taking all the hits? They probably, there was probably a spell cast to get all of them to concentrate on her so everybody else could run away. But then again, why wouldn't they just get them to attack like a wild animal or something? I don't know. Honestly, it's a bit of a weird part of the movie, but yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, I have covered what I wanted to in this Ramble review. We've talked about Cheeto, we've talked about Steve, talked about Maxwell Lord, Diana, all the important people. Obviously, Max's kid. I've covered the how the film reflects me personally. We talked about the general defense, the wishing in the movie, which again I think was fantastic. The cost of it, the overall message of that, the message of the truth. Diana talking to everybody at the end, getting them to, reflect. I think in a way, the first Wonder Woman movie, you see her really come out of her shell to help humanity. But near the end, she kind of closes herself back off. This movie, she's kind of doing the same thing. Well, in the first one, she was really learning about herself and what she's capable of. But she sees the cost that it took to really get to where she was, so she kind of shells back up. And here, um, and here, you see her kind of come out of her shell slowly and reluctantly. Um, Cheetah Minerva really is really I think the first human in a while, and you kind of see I didn't see any magic at work there, although I could be wrong. You see them kind of link, and be friends for a bit, and it's a really cool scene. Um, and you see them share spars of life and stories, and really girlfriend up with each other. In fact, I would even say borderline coupling a bit. But you see her come out of her shell, and she's still on the defensive. She doesn't want to hurt people, but she also doesn't want people to get hurt. So that's why to me, that's why you see a lot of defense. She just wants to show the truth. She wants people to realize what's happening without hurting them physically. So it makes sense, and it's just a very powerful message. And to me, some of the most powerful messages in my life, the source has been women, and Wonder Woman is a symbol for female empowerment. And it's a lot more about the fundamentals, really. It's funny in an episode of Futurama where they go to a planet full of Amazons. And they talk about their sports, their comedy clubs, and it's a full female perspective of everything. It's kind of relevant to that, really, because they talk about the WNBA. They talk about how women comedy is, how it is. Anyway, y'all will know what I'm talking about if you're fans of Futurama, but it's kind of relevant to that. But anyway, that's a weird aside. Sorry, I'm again Ramble review, so this goes everywhere. But the general overall feel of the film is fantastic to me. Again, overall rating of 8 out of 10. The cinematography was fantastic. The score was fucking awesome. The general overture of the movie is fantastic. Again, it does have its downsides, but this movie is not, to me, it's not for the general, not exactly for the general public. I think it's really more of a testament as to what Diana can do as Wonder Woman. And it was Patty Jenkins' vision. Jeff Johns had his dirty hands in this too, so unfortunately. But Patty Jenkins overall, I think it was just her vision of what Wonder Woman can be without having to be as violent and as antagonistic, as some people see her to be. A lot of people in the end wanted her to whoop the shit out of Maxwell Lord, especially for what happened between her and Steve Trevor. But that really wouldn't have been right, because it's not Max's fault that happened. Diana made the wish on the stone, not on Max. So you got to remember that. But historically, heroes tend to beat up on the villains in the end, and that didn't happen here. She just wanted to deliver truth. She wanted people to see the humanity. She wanted Max to see his truth, and that's a very powerful message. But again, it's not for everybody. So anyway, well, thanks for watching. I tried to cover everything I can in this video. I hope you enjoyed it. You'll be able to see more Ramble reviews here soon. Again, this is just something I'm doing. I hope you guys enjoy it. For now, I'll say salute. Remember, you're awesome. Never let the world tell you otherwise. Stay awesome. Stay sane. And if you get a chance, check out Wonder Woman 84. Let me know what you thought down below if you make it to this end. And we'll go from there. All right? So I'll see you next time. Peace.